Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Bill Graham. I'm the Vice Chair of the NGO Committee for Education, Learning, and Literacy at the UN in New York, and the President of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global E-Club. It's my honor to introduce this video of a presentation to the recent 2020 UN Day of the Girl Child side event. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for today's session, Francesca Burek. Francesca is a well-known visionary, global transformational leader and change maker. She's the president and CEO of Fearless Talent Development, a management consultancy that supports fearlessness in people, especially women. She's also the UN representative for the International Federation of Business and Professional Women and the chair of the SDGs Committee for the National Federation of Business and Professional Women, USA. Francesca has been recognized by the U.S. Small Business Administration as Woman in Business Advocate of the Year for her commitment to the advancement of women's business ownership. And she was listed as the 2019 100 Most Inspirational Women in the World by Women Appreciate Women. Francesca?
Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be the moderator of this panel presentation for the 9th International Day of the Girl Child. At this time, I would like to introduce our panelists who come from every continent in the world other than Australia and the Antarctic. Rafia Adam, a 20-year-old from Ghana, Africa. Rafia is the National Coordinator for an International Youth Movement and participant in the Yale Young African Scholar Program. She is also an advocate, peer educator, and public speaker for many international organizations and a youth auxiliary member of the Rotary Dare to Be Great E-Club. Next, Shakriti Bidhari, a 20-year-old Bachelor of Commerce student from Delhi, India. She is also a community developer with the Rohingya refugee community in Delhi and a proud feminist dedicated to achieving a gender-equal society. She is also an active member of ROTAACT in Delhi. Next, Brooke Barchak, a 17-year-old high school student from New Jersey, USA. Brooke has participated in international model UN conferences at the UN and is a youth auxiliary member of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global E-Club. Next, Loriana LaJoya, a 19-year-old student of International Relations and Political Science from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Loriana is a youth advocate in Asociación Minyu and in Fe y Alegría in Argentina and has participated in international Future We Want conferences at the UN in New York. Finally, we have Leah Megalesh, a 17-year-old high school student from Porto, Portugal, who has won a number of awards for International Model UN and was the national winner of a UNESCO writing competition. Leah periodically lectures to upper-class psychology students at a local university and is also currently collaborating on a project dedicated to the restoration of coral reefs. Thank you to all of our panelists for participating in today's session. Today is the 9th annual Day of the Girl Child. Less than 2 months ago, on August 26th, the United States of America celebrated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted the right to vote to women. With this act, the United States joined a few dozen European countries and former British colonies that granted women the right to vote in the years following World War I. During the last century, hundreds of millions of women have been granted the right to vote. But what has that really meant for gender equality? It is true that in many parts of the world, women are free to decide for themselves how they want to live, and they have made significant strides in closing the gap between male and female average incomes, although not completely. But there are many parts of the world where women and girls don't yet share those gains. For example, with the exception of China, up to 1/3 of girls in developing countries will be married before the age of 18. Worse, in many of these cases, the girls had no say in their marriages, and are often being sold into servitude by families who collect payment for their daughters, who then have no rights or opportunities. In other words, they are plain slaves. All in all, there are some 39,000 girls married off every single day. In addition, huge numbers of girls in developing countries are not receiving a useful education. In some countries, fewer than 20% of girls go to school at all. In all, there are more than 130 million girls not in school in the world. Again, 130 million girls are not in school in the world. So today we want to talk about why are there so many parts of the world where girls are second-class people and what needs to be done and can be done to advance the achievement of gender equality, SDG 5, between now and 2030. And now to our panelists. What does the current gender equality situation in many developing countries mean for girls?
For many girls in developing countries, the current gender equality situation means an incomplete education. One of the contributing factors to this is the fact that despite a near universal commitment by governments to end child marriage, it is said that 1 in 3 girls in developing countries, excluding China, will most likely be married before they are 18. They are forced to focus on domestic responsibilities and bear children rather than focus on getting an education. Today, a young girl in South Sudan is more likely to die in pregnancy or childbirth than to complete a primary education. One of the UN Sustainable Development Goals is to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education by 2030. Progress has been made, but still, as many as 48% of girls continue to remain out of school in some regions. As girls enter adolescence, these numbers get higher as they begin to drop out due to reasons stated earlier, such as early pregnancy and their domestic pressures.
Over 67 million women from 20 to 24 years old in 2010 had been married as girls. This translates into 39,000 girls married each day. In second place, we have the education program. According to UNESCO, there are an estimated 130 million girls between the ages of 6 and 17 out of school. 15 million primary school age girls will likely never enter a classroom in their life. Those from the poorest families are more likely to be out of school than their peers from more affluent communities. The UN Sustainable Development Goals have a target to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education by 2030. We made progress, but as many as 48% of girls continue to remain out of school in some regions.
Why is it that so many girls are not afforded opportunities equal to boys in so many parts of the world?
Many girls are not afforded opportunities equal to boys for many reasons, such as cultural traditions, money restrictions, and education. All of these are interrelated. Girls in impoverished families are less likely to be afforded the same opportunities as their brothers because they will be forced into marriages for bride price. Bride price is money, property, or wealth paid to the family of the bride in exchange for marriage. The custom of bride price curtails the free movement of women and essentially puts the girls under the ownership of their husbands. Another reason is that some schools have fees for children to be sent there. For many impoverished families, this fee means having to choose which child to send to school, and because of cultural traditions, it is often seen as more reasonable to send a son than a daughter. Lastly, because of this lack of education, women are severely restricted in their access to information and opportunities. Thus, all three of these issues are interrelated and contribute to creating obstacles for women.
It is undebatable that since the beginning of times, women were portrayed as less capable both physically and mentally. And with cultural practices and the taboo that comes with them, the passage of ideologies from parents to children will build on these beliefs and strengthen them. So girls have always had less access to education because for their assigned social role, it was useless. Now, when you want to get a job done, you won't look, or at least shouldn't look, at whether the candidates in front of you are male or female, but whether they have the skills to get the job done and done quickly and effectively. However, If the female was not given the same opportunity of education as the male, obviously the male will be more promising, therefore your ultimate choice. So the woman will be put aside not because she was less than the man, but because she was not given or even allowed to even try to be more than that. And many governments choose to keep this way because they fear change and what change may imply to them, because knowledge is a liability and independence is a liability and thinking is dangerous because they are unpredictable.
Girls are often prevented from attending school even when they are eager to so. Many families and cultures tend to favor education for boys. Parents and community leaders may not see the value in educating a girl, believing it to be unnecessary for her primary roles in life as a wife and mother.
If there's a family living in poverty, if they have a girl child and a boy child, they will prefer having the boy child focus on studies and the girl child help with the responsibilities of their younger siblings. Or even they have to many a times opt for child labor to just afford food and money for their own family, just to provide basic necessities. So these are situations which we need to battle. We need to battle not just the cultural mindset of the people, but also poverty and this gender normative society which confirms a girl child to the responsibility of a woman, to the responsibility of a wife and mother, and just holding her from growing up and getting an education.
How can we improve the situation and the opportunities for the current generation of girls?
Improving gender equality and creating opportunities for the current generation of girls starts with setting the real needed goals without regard for whether we know how to achieve them or not. Once we do this, we can then strive to find real solutions for achieving these goals and getting the results we want to see.
You have said that we need to set goals based on what is needed, regardless of whether we know how to achieve them. But what do we need to do to bring about the kind of change that will dramatically improve the lives of girls worldwide?
It is inconceivable that countries can sustainably achieve the SDGs, including poverty, education, equality, and other SDGs that impact opportunities for young people in general, but especially girls, if they have not significantly closed the economic gap to developed countries.
Otherwise, how can a country with only a fraction of the median per capita income of a developed country be expected to be able to finance addressing hunger, poverty, health, education, infrastructure, and much more?
But how can we expect poor developing countries to close the economic gap? Isn't that unrealistic?
As we have said, there is no value achieving goals that do not solve the real problems. We have to set goals based on not what we think we can do, but rather what is needed. It is when we strive to find ways to do what we don't know how to do that we grow.
Okay, but how could you approach closing the economic gap between developing and developed countries?
To close the economic gap, more important than anything, a country must be competitive. For a country to be sustainably competitive, the bulk of its population must be able to offer competitive services. That is only possible if they have competitive skills and knowledge, which come with education. In other words, we have to find ways to have the entire population of developing countries achieving a competitive world-class education.
The entire population? Wouldn't it be enough to get a significant increase in young people getting a world-class education? For instance, an increase in those receiving a world-class education from, say, 15% to 20%.
No, because that will still leave the bulk of the population unable to afford the services of those with world-class educations and would only contribute to the brain drain in those countries as those with the top educations migrate to places where people can afford their services.
How do you envision being able to do that?
We have to get the entire youth population of these countries to become world competitive learners, to become world-class drivers.
Without that, they have no chance.
It is a question of communicating with the masses and giving them good reasons to strive to become world-class and convincing them that they can become world-class.
We have to convince students that it is less about having world-class schools and teachers and more about having world-class learners.
And do you see ways of changing the behavior of the masses of young people in the developing countries?
We do see some ways to start mobilizing the masses and get them learning to be world-class problem solvers, beginning with solving the problem related to their getting that world-class education, but also an entrepreneurial problem solver mindset.
Don't you think this sounds a little unrealistic?
As we said, you can't achieve what you don't aim at. Steve Jobs said, "Those who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world are the ones who do." Why is that so? Because it is the ones who believe they can who try.
We will simply not accept failure because we didn't dare to try.
Wow, that's amazing. I believe that young women with attitudes such as yours are the people who can bring about such dramatic change in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, there you heard it. The secret to bringing about the dramatic change the world needs is dare to set goals based not on what you think you can do, but on what is needed. There is no value in achieving targets that do not accomplish what is needed. Not to be afraid to strive to find ways to do what you don't know how to do. If we are afraid to take on challenges simply because they are big or difficult, how do we expect to make progress? And remember, as long as you're still trying, you have not failed. Girls, is there anything else that you would like to add at this point?
Yes, dare to be great.
Dare to be great.
Dare to be great.
Dare to be great.
Yes, dare to be great.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you all for watching today. And I challenge you to dare to be great.